So last night when I got in, there was a message for me on Facebook from my friend Chris Reinhardt in Tupelo, Mississippi, linking me to a Governor Tarkin jumbo figure. And his comment was that it looks nothing like Peter Cushing. I've since heard people say it looks more like Mandy Patinkin. The problem I had with it upon first viewing was the crooked position of the right arm holding this black staff. I said, since when does he play the clarinet? A lot of people were taking issue with the wording of the ad because it says, just like the figure you had when you were a kid. There was no Governor Tarkin figure when I was a kid. There was no, vintage Kenner style figure ever until this guy came out in 2019. Granted, there was a Grand Moff Tarkin figure and it said Kenner on the card in the Power of the Force whatever line circa the 90s, but it wasn't in a vintage Kenner sculpt like this. I remember as a kid, and this would be probably around the time they brought out the Luke Stormtrooper figure in the Power of the Force line. But I remember conversations with my neighbor Craig about figures we wished Kenner would make from the Star Wars movies. And for some reason, we always phrased it as, if I could save the life of the president of Kenner, I would want. And so there was Oola, there was Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru, Wedge, Biggs, any figure that you could think of that Kenner had overlooked, Mon Mothma, that you would want them to make. And top of the list for me and Craig was always Grand Moff Tarkin. So many years later, I did a custom version of the figure. So you can see there were some things I got really right on this figure. Obviously both using the Imperial Commander body as the starting point. In some respects, theirs is better. I kind of like mine in some respects. I also did a Imperial Commander in the gray, similar recipe, and you can tell just how loose the limbs are on this guy. I always tried to use beater figures for my custom projects, but one thing that I did with these guys was I made additional heads for them. I can't find the heads at the moment, but the reason being that around the time the Empire Strikes Back figures came out, like this Imperial Commander, the heads were hollow and the bodies had a post, and you could just pop the heads off and swap them around. Previous figures, Star Wars figures, it was the head had a post that went into a hollow body, different system. But Empire, they started doing it this way. So what I did was I took two figures, one from G.I. Joe, it was the Grunt figure, and one was a Fisher-Price Adventure person with the sideburns, and I cut their heads off and I hollowed them out so they would fit on this shaft, and I made Mati and Tag that could be put on these two bodies. So I never could have Tarkin and Mati and Tag all at the same time. I only had two gray bodies, but I could at least, pose them as photos, and there's a picture of them up on the swca.com among my custom figures. See if I can get this guy's head back on without breaking that post, as has happened to me in the past. Of course, what I didn't know as a kid or as a customizer was that Kenner had made plans to bring out a Governor Tarkin figure circa 85. They were going to do a non-movie expansion of the toy line for the first time, and they kit bashed some figures together. I don't think they actually showed a prototype of Tarkin, but they did show these two guys. This is the Mongo Beefhead Tribesman and one of the Imperial Attack Droids or whatever they were called. Mongo I customized right after seeing a Steve Sansweet article in one of the Star Wars magazines. It was a simple recipe to deduce because the head is clearly Squidhead's head, and you just cut it off and re-glue it on the body in a different orientation. You give him the arms of Hammerhead and you cut down the harness there from a 4LOM. 4LOM was the alien, Zuckuss was the robot. Years later they realized that should have been the other way around and they tried to change them. So if I call them 4LOM, I'm generally meaning the alien. And if I say Zuckuss, I'm talking about the robot. And this figure is made from the Zuckuss figure and the 21B arms and 4LOM's gun. And there were some others of these that I've attempted. I cannot locate those at the moment. It's a little worrisome because I've looked for them many, many, many times. And I just don't think I've seen them since we moved into this house. So that bothers me sometimes. Hopefully I will open a box one day and unearth them. Now, after I made my custom Mongo Beefhead figure, I actually sent either a photo or a video or both of it in a package that I was mailing to Steve Sansweet. He'd written a book. I bought the book. I sent it to him with postage to return it, and just asked for it to be autographed. Did a lot of these things after reading an article that Gus Lopez wrote about collecting autographs for Martin Thurne's Star Wars Collector. The package back from Steve Sansweet was so awesome because on the envelope, on the box with the book in it, he addressed it to Alex Kinner, newborn. And on the letter that he enclosed on the inside, he said, "Mongo Beefhead lives." So very nice to get that from Steve. And also then he was the person who later got me a job writing for the Star Wars Insider. So a couple of nice memories there of Mr. Steve Sansweet. So we know that Kinner was going to make a Tarkin figure, and he would have looked very similar to this and also to this guy. So I've previously done a video about Tarkin, and I said I might haul out my old Death Star and use new figures in a vintage environment. You know, take a picture of him in the natural setting for his character, because that's the only place we ever see him in the movie. I have yet to do that. Notice the shirt I'm wearing. So, couple of quick topics. When I graduated college in 1992, the graduation gift that I received from my dad was $600 cash, which he specified was to go towards the purchase of a video camera, something that I'd been wanting for quite a while. And I used some other graduation money from other people to go in and buy this Panasonic PV700. I started making a movie with my vintage Star Wars toys. The name of that movie is Whoever Dies with the Most Toys Wins. This is the actual water bottle given to me by two of my college buddies after they had seen my collection, and they went out of town and saw this at a gas station. They said, we were thinking of you when we saw this. And the opening shot, the camera does a pedestal down in front of this water bottle to the tune of the Alfred Newman 20th Century Fox fanfare. So it goes, whoever dies with the most toys, W-I-N-S. It's the only shot in the movie that has live sound. The rest of it I synced music to picture later, but that one I needed the timing of trying to make those be lyrics. And there's a shot in Whoever Dies with the Most Toys Wins of multiple Death Stars. And this was taken in the room of my first house, which later became the boys' nursery. At the time, it just had all my Star Wars stuff in it. It's a Y-Wing fighter banking around what appears to be 3 Death Stars. It was more like 2.5. So we moved into this house, and all my Death Stars had been put in a box, and other stuff got stacked on top of it. And then I got more pieces to Death Stars from other people. And one was a gift of some childhood toys from a friend of mine, Wes Thompson. One was just a lot that I bought off of like eBay or something like that for a specific part, but I got all these other parts in there with it, vintage toy parts. And I threw those in a box in this location, and my other Death Stars were in this. I have never tried to see how many Death Stars I have all at once. So now, here's my box that says 3+ vintage Death Stars. It did say Star Destroyer playsets and a few other things in here, but I've actually gone through and taken those out. So all that's in here is Death Star pieces.